Hello people, let's go through my watch list for next week, and we start as always on the DXY on the weekly time frame, and we can see here it looks pretty straightforward. We have a very nice bearish candle from the high. We discussed this last week. This initially here did not really look like a follow through, and indeed we did get a retest of the high. We can see here on the 4-hour time frame. We were looking last week actually for a breakout to the upside. We were looking for a potential continuation in this area for a breakout. Instead, we had the first impulse into now in a bit more corrective phase. So we have to consider overall, we are still not really fully committed. It does look a bit more like bearish pressure. So therefore, I'm leaning a bit more towards a bearish sentiment for the US dollar next week. However, we have to keep in mind there is FOMC second week of December, and where we are positioned and also looking at the other dollar related pairs, it's not committed to an either bigger directional move yet. So right now there's so many options when you consider here second week December, that's somewhere in this area here. So just look at this piece of price action. So many things can happen in here, and right now I'm leaning a bit more towards a bearish continuation. So if we get something like that next week, we can take advantage of a move from here at least into this low. But you can see here in terms of proportions, that would be an impulse, a correction, another impulse into the low. So it can still turn around and come back one more time for a larger expanding structure here before we then see a turnaround, and then that would more or less align for mid-December to then get a bigger directional move after FOMC meeting. So we have to be very, very careful and look for clear price action confirmation before we enter any trade. Ideally, we just get a small hover here in this area on the DXY and then drop out. This already would be enough for a trade into these lows, or even slightly lower. That just means overall with the positioning we are right now, we have to consider a bit more aggressive management on dollar related pairs. This leads me to Euro US dollar. Here we just stay on the 4-hour time frame. You can see here I have some lines as potential guides. So we have here a potential 1, 2, 3 in the making, a bigger structure here into this area of interest here to the left. Therefore, I would look for short-term long plays on the 1-hour time frame here. We had here a failed continuation in this area here. We had here some volume accumulation, which then failed to continue to the downside. Instead, we broke out. We retested these areas of interest here, retested the whole structure, and then had a 1, 2, 3 bullish continuation. And we now broke out to the upside. So here again, we have to be careful. Looking at the DXY, if we say it's just selling off what we discussed before to the first low, that would open up the range from here to finish the higher structure. So that would make sense. Therefore, I would look on the lower time frame for a confirmed bullish continuation in this area here to then enter a long to finish the structure, or even better, we just break out of this whole a bit more messy price action followed by a continuation in this area would still be enough on the lower time frame to warrant the trade to finish the structure. Australian dollar, US dollar, you can see here as well, like just stay on the 1-hour time frame. You know this pair over the last couple of weeks. We had that on watch all the time. We had here this very nice, it looked very nice first bearish continuation, which then failed to commit. We had a small hover here, which then was an indication for a change in sentiment, broke out to the upside, fully broke through here to the first area of interest, failed to commit to the downside, tapped the next area of interest here, did not even give an entry. I was looking for a long entry here. Unfortunately, price did not really tap this liquidity area here to the left, so no entry for me here. But you can see overall this really looks like bullish pressure for next week. So I'm looking here for a small hover in this area into London session to enter a long here on Monday to just continue the bullish momentum. Pound US dollar, again, a bit a tricky one. We had that, or we have it on watch for a while, and we said on the daily already, let's go to the daily, that there is a potential for a larger bearish structure here in this area, which takes some time. So we discussed this first initial trade here already a few weeks ago. And we now see that we have also we had some nice bullish momentum, but we are stalling here, retesting this swing low here to the left, going to the 4-hour time frame, or even to the 1 hour, even better. We can see here, we actually did tap the high, and then we had a nice initial impulsive reaction. But overall, this is then corrective price action. So then again, that could be an indication for a change in sentiment. And if you look at how price reached this high, so we had here a nice impulse, we had a very nice bullish continuation structure, and then tapped the high, retraced, and went straight into a corrective 1, 2, 3 bullish structure. So we flipped here again. And here you can argue there was an entry in this area here for a long continuation. Not something I would entertain on Friday evening, of course. Something like that early in the week on a Monday or Tuesday would be ideal. So what I'm looking now here is for price to come back one more time to then enter along in this area. So basically a double bottom to then enter after this 1, 2, 3 structure. That would be okay. Or if we just start to hover around here in this area, with the deliberate lower time frame structure, then that's fine as well. Or we just see something like that over Asia session in Monday, and we get a slightly larger structure into Tuesday for a 4-hour entry in this area would also be okay. So that's my game plan for pound, US dollar, Australian dollar, Canadian. There were some entries here. We discussed this trade here last week. This was on watch to finish the structure here for a potential turnaround. We said we were neutral on this one, long or short, and I'm still on the same. So you can just see here there was for me there was no entry here because it did not really tap the low, but technically if you have a bit more risk appetite, there would be a nice entry in this area. Probably a break even with this spike here, but then a follow through. These are just, that's another run. I'm just analyzing right now for me in my trading journal. So for now, the game plan next week would be to finish this 1, 2, 3 structure here, slightly larger structure, which would then make sense in terms of sequence. We have here the first impulse, then here the first continuation, and going here in the next continuation. The impulse in between is a bit short, but overall Australian dollar, Canadian, if you just look at the price action here to the left, you can see that we have that fairly often. We have these structures into the next correction, into the next structure, structural flips. We see that fairly often, and therefore I would not be surprised to see a bigger structure here as a continuation to the upside. Euro, Swiss francs, here as well, we were looking for potential shorts, but you can see it's kind of everywhere similar. We have this expanding 1, 2, 3 structure into this liquidity area here to the left or area of interest. Then we failed with an impulsive reaction. Instead, we started a corrective reaction, and corrective structure, deliberate price action on the highs of an expanding can also be a continuation to the upside. And I'm now looking more for a long continuation. So this one is really just to find the proper entry. Again, here another confirmation on the 4-hour time frame or a double bottom or something like that would be okay for me to enter. Euro, New Zealand dollar got some momentum now. Let's shortly look on the weekly time frame. We turn around a bit in no man's land, but you can see here we had multiple tries to the upside. We failed. We have now a very, very nice, strong bearish reversal candle here on the weekly time frame. On the 4-hour time frame, we can see we have some momentum. We had this corrective price action here, a very clear breakout, a nice impulsive move, first smaller continuation here. Now going into the next slightly larger, so sequence-wise perfect. On the 4-hour time frame, we can also see we are trading through this area of interest here to the left. We have enough room to manage the trade to the low. So I'm just looking here on the 1-hour time frame for a potential entry. That can happen in multiple ways. We can approach this area and close the gap here in terms of like a structural approach, or just a 1-hour reversal on this, rejecting this liquidity area here to the left would be okay for me to enter trade. Preferably 2 1-hour candles or a 4-hour candle, considering this might take some time to really form something here, which is completely fine after this impulsive move. Pound Australian dollar, that's a trade I'm still in. This is more a bit of a swing trade. We can see here on the daily time frame, we had here a nice daily washout candle. I was first a bit skeptical here, but then looking at, even though it's bullish price action, the wick really washed out this liquidity area here to the left and finished the structure. So it really respected the overall structure. We can see it very clear here on the 4-hour time frame. We discussed price to close this gap, and it closed the gap in form of a nice 1, 2, 3 structure into the high. And then I entered a limit order play here after this 4-hour candle. So that was basically early morning. So the price was somewhere hovering in here. That's 4-hour for me. I traded Asia session and I'm now in the trade. Not ideally the price action here is still a bit corrective. So I would have liked it a bit more impulsive. So however, I will just manage the trade for break even, and let's see what price is doing. So ideally we see here a dropout, another smaller continuation in this area, then I would entertain a scale in that area. Otherwise, I will just let price do its thing. Pound yen on the weekly time frame, we can see we have fairly strong bullish momentum pressure in all the yen pairs actually. So I'm also here looking for price to tap the high again, at least the high here on the 4-hour time frame. We can see, actually, let's go to the 1-hour time frame. We can see here as well, we started a very corrective price action, forming a potential structure here on top of this previous high. So that would be ideal. So if we, my trading view is a bit laggy. If we see a double bottom here, or form then of a 1, 2, 3 in this area, I would entertain a long here to at least finish the move into the high, and usually we supersede the previous highs, especially if we accumulate so much volume in this area. New Zealand dollar yen is basically the same. Looking on the weekly time frame, again we have very, very strong bullish pressure. I like it a bit more in terms of positioning. There's still a lot of room to go into these highs or the previous high here to the left. We broke out of the structure. We can see that here on the 4-hour time frame, we had nice structure. We had here this 1, 2, 3 into the high. We discussed the potential long here. I did not get an entry here last week, so we finished the overall move. And then again, you can see it's common in all the pairs right now. We tap the highs, but then we don't get the expected reaction. Instead, price starts to hover around the high in terms or in form of corrective price action, which then again is always an indication for neutral price action in that area. So it can go in both directions, and I'm leaning more towards a long continuation on the 1-hour time frame. So ideally, we see price coming back one more time into this area, closing the gap here to this liquidity area, basically retesting the previous high here to the left to then enter a long. New Zealand dollar Canadian on the 4-hour time frame here, we can see we were looking as well here for a short continuation into the low, closing the gap here to the low on to the left basically. And then again, you see I'm basically just repeating me on the majority of the pairs. It's starting a bit more corrective, so I'm looking now here for price to form a deliberate price action a bullish structure basically to enter along in this area here to continue to the upside. And then I had here pound Canadian from last week. That's a trade I took on Monday. We were looking at this trade here in the Weekly Forex Forecast from last Sunday. I basically took the trade actually early morning in Asia session, completely mismanaged the trade. I was a bit too aggressive on these highs here and locked in a bit too much profit. So you can see here, I just got out for a bit more than 3%. And instead, if I just manage it a bit loosely, yeah, I could have like a lot more, but it's okay. Overall, it's fair. I should have taken a take profit in this area as I initially planned. But yeah, overall, that's my watch list for next week. Thanks for watching. See you next week. Bye-bye.